The sunset painted the city skyline in shades of amber and rose, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive suite. Emma Richardson stood in the corner office, her professional attire crisp despite the long day, her red hair pulled back in a neat bun, glasses perched on her nose. She held her phone, staring at the screen with a mixture of disbelief and anger. At 32, Emma had worked as executive assistant to CEO James Hartwell for 5 years. She'd been efficient, professional, and dedicated, sometimes staying until midnight to prepare presentations, canceling personal plans to accommodate his schedule, going above and beyond what her job description required. She'd told herself it was career ambition, that this position would open doors, that the sacrifice was temporary. But she'd also harbored feelings for James that she'd never acknowledged aloud. The way he'd smile when she anticipated his needs before he voiced them. The occasional moments of connection when they'd worked late together, sharing takeout and talking about more than just business. She'd convinced herself there was something there. Something unspoken but real, until 20 minutes ago, when her phone had buzzed with a message from James. The photo showed James in a tuxedo, standing beside a stunning blonde woman in a designer gown at what appeared to be a charity gala. The woman's hand rested possessively on his arm, a massive engagement ring catching the camera's flash. The caption read, "Announced our engagement tonight. See what you could have had if you'd been less focused on spreadsheets and more on actually living." Emma's hands trembled as she read it again and again. The cruelty of it took her breath away. Had he really just sent this to her? Had he known about her feelings all along and decided to twist the knife? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from James. Shit. Wrong person. Delete that. Too late. The damage was done. Emma stood in the empty office. James was still at the gala and felt 5 years of devotion crumble into dust. The late nights, the canceled dates with friends, the relationships she'd avoided because she was too busy, and secretly hoping James would notice her. All of it had been based on a fantasy, but it was the casualness of his cruelty that cut deepest. See what you could have had. As if she'd been auditioning for the role of his partner, as if her dedication had been some kind of courtship. He'd been entertaining and rejecting simultaneously, as if 5 years of professional excellence was just her way of trying to win his affection, rather than doing her actual job. Emma's shock crystallized into clarity, then into anger, then into something else entirely. A calm, decisive resolve. She sat down at her computer and began typing. Not a resignation letter, though she knew this would likely end that way. Something else. Something he deserved to hear. 20 minutes later, she hit send and copied the entire executive board on the email. Then she gathered her personal belongings, her favorite mug, the photo of her parents, the small plant she'd been nurturing on her desk, and walked out of the office for what she suspected would be the last time. The email she'd sent was professional, measured, and devastating. Subject, response to your accidental message. Mr. Hartwell, I received your photo and caption intended for someone else, followed by your request to delete it. I won't be deleting it. Instead, I'll be forwarding it to HR as evidence of workplace harassment, along with this response. You wrote, see what you could have had if you'd been less focused on spreadsheets and more on actually living. I'd like to address this remarkable statement. First, I was never focused on spreadsheets in pursuit of you personally. I was focused on spreadsheets because that was my job, a job I performed excellently for 5 years, as my performance reviews consistently reflected. If you interpreted my professional dedication as personal interest, that reveals more about your ego than my intentions. Second, the implication that I was somehow auditioning for the role of your partner through my work is both presumptuous and insulting. You were my employer, not a prize I was competing for. The fact that you saw my professional competence through the lens of personal attraction demonstrates a profound failure to maintain appropriate workplace boundaries. Third, your see what you could have had suggests you believe I've lost something valuable. Let me be clear. I've lost nothing but the illusion that working for you was advancing my career. What you've lost is an employee who made you look far more competent than you actually are. I'll be honest, I did have feelings for you at one point. I'm embarrassed to admit that now, seeing how little you thought of me. But those feelings were based on a version of you I'd constructed in my head, not the reality of who you are. The reality, as tonight has shown, is that you're a small man who derives satisfaction from making others feel inferior. So thank you for the accidental message. It was the wake-up call I needed. You're right that I've been too focused on work and not enough on actually living. I'm correcting that starting now. Effective immediately, I resign. You'll find all current projects documented in the shared drive, though given your comment about spreadsheets, I'm sure you'll have no trouble managing them yourself. I wish you and your fiancée all the best. She's definitely getting what she deserves. Emma Richardson. Emma's phone began ringing before she'd even reached the elevator. James. She declined the call. He called again and again. By the time she reached the parking garage, she had 7 missed calls and a string of increasingly panicked text messages. Emma, please don't send that to the board. I can explain. It was a joke. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Please call me back. We can work this out. You're overreacting. She blocked his number and drove home in a daze, her emotions swinging between vindication and devastation. She'd just ended her career at one of the most prestigious companies in the city. The professional network she'd built, the reputation she'd cultivated, possibly her entire career, trajectory, all potentially, destroyed by one email sent in anger. But as she pulled into her apartment complex and saw the lights of the city spread below her, Emma felt something unexpected, relief. For 5 years, she'd been living for someone else's approval, someone else's schedule, someone else's definition of success. And in one cruel, accidental message, James had freed her from that prison. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. Emma Richardson? An unfamiliar female voice. Speaking. This is Patricia Chen. I'm on the board of directors at Hartwell Industries. I just read your email. Emma's stomach dropped. Here it came, the professional blacklisting, the legal threats, the destruction of her reputation. I understand if the company wants to take legal action. I was emotional, but I stand by everything I wrote. Legal action? Patricia laughed, a warm sound that Emma hadn't expected. Ms. Richardson, I'm calling to offer you a job. Emma pulled over, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? I run Chen Enterprises. We're a competitive firm, and I've been trying to recruit you for 2 years. You've always declined, citing loyalty to Hartwell. But after reading your email, which was copied to the entire board, by the way, and has been forwarded to me by 3 different people in the last 10 minutes, I'm hoping your loyalty might have shifted. I don't understand. Patricia's voice was warm but direct. Emma, do you know how many people on that board have been waiting for someone to call out James Hartwell's behavior? He's the CEO because his father founded the company, not because he's competent. Everyone knows his success is built on the work of people like you, talented professionals who do the actual work while he takes credit. Then why hasn't anyone said anything? Because he's the founder's son, and the board has been unwilling to act without cause. But what you just did, sending that email with evidence of harassment, documenting his inappropriate conduct, doing it professionally despite being clearly hurt, you just gave them cause. I'd bet money James is getting a very uncomfortable phone call right about now. Emma sat in stunned silence. But more than that, Patricia continued, you demonstrated something I value highly. The courage to stand up for yourself, even when it costs you something. That takes strength. And I want people with strength working for me. What kind of position are you offering? Director of Operations reporting directly to me. 20% salary increase from what you're making now, full benefits, and a culture that values work-life balance. No more midnight spreadsheet emergencies unless there's an actual emergency. No more sacrificing your personal life for someone else's ego. Just excellent work rewarded appropriately. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. Why? Because I've been where you are, Patricia said softly. 20 years ago, I was an executive assistant to a CEO who treated me like a combination of servant and potential conquest. When I finally stood up for myself, I lost my job and thought my career was over. But it was actually the beginning. I started my own company with nothing but anger and determination, and now I compete directly with the man who tried to destroy me. And you win? Regularly, Patricia said with satisfaction. Emma, I'm not offering you this job out of pity. I'm offering it because you're talented, because you've demonstrated integrity under pressure, and because I know exactly what you're capable of when you're not wasting your potential propping up an inadequate man. So what do you say? Ready to stop working for someone who sees you as a supporting character and start being the lead in your own story? Emma didn't hesitate. When can I start? 3 months later, Emma sat in her new office, smaller than James's, but entirely hers, reviewing quarterly reports. Her team was talented and motivated. Patricia was a mentor who actually valued her contributions, and for the first time in years, Emma left work at 5:30 most days. She had time for friends, for hobbies, for the life she'd been neglecting. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She'd changed her number after the incident. But somehow, people still found ways to reach her. The text message contained a news article link. She clicked it reluctantly. Hartwell Industries CEO removed following harassment allegations. Emma read the article with growing amazement. After her email, 3 other women had come forward with similar stories of inappropriate behavior from James. The board had launched an investigation, finding a pattern of harassment and mismanagement. James had been removed as CEO, though he retained a minor role due to his family's ownership stake. The company was now being run by an interim CEO, while they searched for permanent leadership. Another text came through, "Thought you'd want to know. Your email started a revolution. Patricia." Emma smiled. She hadn't intended to bring down a CEO. She'd just been hurt and angry, and unwilling to let cruelty go unanswered. But sometimes standing up for yourself did more than just change your own life. It gave others permission to stand up too. 6 months after the photo incident, Emma received an invitation to speak at a women's leadership conference. The topic: finding your voice in the workplace. She almost declined. Public speaking terrified her, but then she thought about the Emma who'd spent 5 years, making herself small, accommodating, invisible except as an extension of her boss's success. That Emma would have declined. The new Emma accepted. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of professional women, Emma told her story. The photo, the cruel caption, the email she'd sent in anger and hurt, the job offer that had come from speaking her truth, the other women who'd found courage to share their stories, because she'd shared hers. I spent 5 years thinking that success meant being indispensable to someone else, she said. That if I just worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, proved my worth enough, I'd be valued. But here's what I learned. You can't earn respect from someone determined to withhold it. You can't prove your worth to someone invested in diminishing you. She paused, remembering that sunset in the corner office. The moment her world had shattered and rebuilt itself simultaneously. That photo my CEO sent, "See what you could have had," was meant to hurt me, to put me in my place, to remind me that I was just an assistant, easily overlooked and ultimately replaceable. But you know what? He was right. I could have had what he was offering. A life spent supporting someone else's dreams while neglecting my own. A relationship based on his convenience and my accommodation. A career defined by how well I anticipated his needs rather than pursuing my own potential. Emma smiled. So yes, I see what I could have had, and I'm grateful I lost it, because losing that opened space for what I actually deserved. Respect, autonomy, leadership, and a life I'm actually living instead of just managing. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, dozens of women approached her with their own stories. The bosses who'd crossed lines, the careers sacrificed for others' advancement, the moments they'd found their voices and everything had changed. One young woman, probably in her mid-20s, waited until the crowd thinned. "What if I send an email like yours and nobody offers me a job?" she asked. "What if I just end up unemployed and blacklisted?" Emma considered this seriously. That's possible. Standing up for yourself doesn't come with guarantees. But can I ask you something? How's staying silent working for you? The woman's eyes filled with tears. It's killing me. Every day, a little bit more. Then you already have your answer, Emma said gently. Maybe someone will offer you a job like Patricia offered me. Maybe you'll have to struggle for a while. But at least you'll be struggling as yourself, with your dignity intact, instead of slowly disappearing while someone else takes credit for your existence. Years later, Emma would think back on that photo, that caption, That moment her life had split into before and after. She'd become director of operations, then VP, then eventually Patricia's partner when Chen Enterprises expanded. She'd mentored dozens of young professionals, especially women, in finding their voices and their worth. She'd dated, fallen in love with someone who valued her as an equal, gotten married in a small ceremony where Patricia stood as her maid of honor. She'd built a life that was hers, full and rich and nothing like the half-life. She'd been living as James Hartwell's overqualified, underappreciated assistant, and sometimes, in quiet moments, she'd pull up that old email, the one she'd sent in hurt and anger, and read it again. Not because she was proud of the anger, but because she was proud of the boundary. Proud of the woman who'd said no more, even when it cost her everything she thought she wanted. James had sent her a photo meant to diminish her. See what you could have had. She'd sent back the truth. See what I deserve instead. And in the end, that truth had set her free. The photo had been meant as a weapon. It became a gift. Not the gift James intended, not a reminder of her inadequacy, or a punishment for her presumed ambitions, but the gift of clarity, of perspective, of a wake-up call so brutal it couldn't be ignored or rationalized away. Emma had seen what she could have had, and she'd chosen something better. Every single day since, she chose something better. That was the real ending to the story. Not the dramatic email or the firing, or even the new job. The real ending was the 1,000 small choices that followed, each one affirming her worth, her voice, her right to be the main character in her own life rather than a supporting player in someone else's. See what you could have had, James had written. Emma had looked, and she'd seen, and she'd walked away without a single regret. That was the photo that changed everything.